So you might wonder why the multiple systems view emerged. You might think, well, it seems like the theory-based views, they have all the strengths of the similarity-based views, and they can do all these other things because of that extra structure that they have. But one of the reasons why the multiple systems views started to emerge was that any particular one view, whether it's the classical view or the similarity view or the theory-based view, contains features for all sorts of different situations. And as a result, it's each view is apt at explaining particular kinds of categorization, and then it seems to have difficulties with other kinds of categorization. In addition to that, when we started doing fMRI and EEG and single cell recordings and looking at the neuroscience of category learning and categorization, that data seemed to suggest that there were different systems. And notice back in the first concepts lecture, I talked about two different kinds of paradigms, right? The rule extraction paradigm and the exemplar paradigm, right? Where you learn from a set of exemplars and then you would generalize from that learning set. So there seem to be two experimental paradigms that point to two different kinds of concept learning, and they have different properties. And it looks like they have different underlying neurological substrata. And there are other things as well. You can start looking at things like changes in attention through eye tracking that seem to suggest that when people learn concepts, they start with rule-based approaches, and then if the rule-based approaches don't work, there's a switch over to that implicit system. So it's because this one-size-fits-all theory about concepts doesn't seem to be working out. And just as envisioned, because we start to see this neuroscientific evidence that suggests that there isn't a single system, but perhaps multiple systems, that models like COVIS, multiple systems views, start to emerge. The COVIS model of category learning on this account assumes separate rule-based and procedural learning category systems that compete for access to response production. The rule-based system is an explicit learning system that includes explicit working memory and attention components. The procedural learning system is an implicit learning system that is linked with procedural learning. The rule-based system selects and tests simple verbalizable hypotheses about category membership. The procedural learning system gradually associates categorization responses with regions of perceptual space via reinforcement learning. That is, it starts to associate perceptual similarities across instances as a result of its implicit learning. The rules that the rule-based system select are usually verbalizable, and the method of the procedural system categorizations is oftentimes not verbalizable, or at least easily verbalizable. Rule-based category learning tasks are those in which category structures can be learned via some explicit reasoning process, hence that paradigm. Frequently, the rule that maximizes accuracy, i.e. the optimal rule, is easy to describe verbally. So cases where this system seems to work well are cases like this. In most common applications, only one stimulus dimension is relevant, and the observer's task is to discover this relevant dimension and then to map the different dimensional values to the relevant categories. Even so, rule-based tasks can require attention to multiple stimulus dimensions, so the rules can be more complex and they can be more than one rule. Now, that implicit procedural learning system of COVIS is hypothesized to mediate information integration category learning. So information integration tasks are those in which accuracy is maximized, only if information for two or more stimulus components or dimensions is integrated at some pre-decisional stage. And what would that amount to? Well, perceptual integration could take the form of treating the stimulus as a gestalt or computing a weighted linear combination of dimensional values. And so this implicit procedural system looks a lot like a similarity-based system. Unlike previous theories of concepts, which focus primarily on what Ashby calls the cognitive theories, right? COVIS has been explicitly developed to predict both cognitive behavioral data as well as neurological data. And research in neuroscience, in concept learning, in development, and in categorization has started to support multiple systems theories, not specifically COVIS necessarily, but multiple systems theories combining an implicit system and an explicit system for concept learning and for categorization. And so the result of this is that this is being driven by data about our neurobiological makeup. It's being driven by data about what particular approaches are good at and what they aren't. So what are rule-based approaches good at? What are implicit approaches good at? And so as a result, this theory seems more tied into the data, and that's been the primary driving force for its attraction over the last decade or so.